Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2024, and this is episode 917 of Living Free in Tennessee. It's a Friday show, so it's Homestead Happenings. Do me a favor, guys, if you're hopping onto the live stream, give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And then click that bell so you get notified every time we go live. And if you're feeling extra generous and you like the show, let your friends know that it's a cool show to tune into on a Friday morning as we get set for our weekend ahead of us. So today we're going to talk about trees coming down on fences and power lines, funky sheep ears, type 1.5 errors on the homestead, and more. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is the Homestead Boot Camp at Haven Earth Trade School. It is this weekend, and Amani let me know today if you want to just do a day pass on Saturday and not attend the whole event. They launched one this week. If you want to sign up for that, send her an email. Just go to havenearthtradeschool.net and send her an email, and she'll get you set up for that. I want to thank our two sponsors of today's show. The first sponsor is KangenWaterCollective.com. A lot of people have been asking me about this Kangen water machine, and the truth of the matter is I chose it based on being on the water and how it made me feel. And so like this, at that point, I didn't care about any of the science behind it. So I've just gone back and started learning about it. And the KangenWaterCollective.com website has a lot of interesting information you can check out if you're just sort of interested in what is this thing that Nicole Sauce is doing. I can tell you this, body aches that I've had since the fall are gone. That's my first week result. What do you think about that?
It's good.
Are you able to get any closer to the mic than like 7 miles away? Because quiet voice paired with not speaking into the mic right there is an issue. Anyway, so that's the deal with that. Our other sponsor of today's, who is our other sponsor of today's show? Oh, Self-Reliance Festival. That's coming October 5th and 6th in Camden, Tennessee. Self-RelianceFestival.com. And we got a sponsor come through like a week ago who wanted to bring early bird ticket prices down. So we just sent out the email today. Early bird tickets just dropped to $50. That's kind of a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way this works, guys, is the more tickets we sell, the more they get to offset your ticket price. And we want to show them that we love sponsors. So if you're going to the Self-Reliance Festival in Camden, Tennessee, grab your tickets as soon as possible. And so we can let them know how many people are excited about this. Self-RelianceFestival.com. I've got Bear Independent. I've got Jack Spirko. I've got Sunny Pazikas. I have got Kiri, who is in the live stream. She's giving a presentation. Who else?
I don't.
Okay, so this is not official, but I'm pretty sure CJ Kilmer from Dangerous History Podcast is coming, but we don't know for sure. That's a spoiler alert. Yeah, we've got Zach from An American Homestead coming.
I was just watching him.
I know, you sent me a video from him today.
Yeah.
Yeah, about alpha gal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Zach put out a video about a cure for alpha gal that is not talked about, that is related to an algae that grows in a pond or something. I haven't watched it yet.
Because pharmaceutical companies can't make money.
Okay,
off of it,
so yeah. So anyway, and I know anybody who has alpha gal doesn't really like that they have it. So
yeah,
it's one of those things where if it works or not, you find out by trying it sometimes if it's not going to harm you, which is how I got into Kangen water, actually. Yeah. I was like, well, might as well give it a try. And then I did. And I was like, oh, gosh, I could have done that 2 years ago. By the way, it's not fun to have body aches all the time. But anyway. So I'm super chipper today because I don't have any body aches anymore. Anyway, so that's all like happening at Self-Reliance Festival. Check out more at selfreliancefestival.com. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show. Do you know what it is? Because these are not the notes for the show.
I have no idea.
It's featured forage. What's coming up on the homestead? What have you seen?
Lots of dryness.
Okay, so he sees dryness and I see things blooming. We've got yeah.
Speaking of water.
What oh, you're gonna turn the water off? Yeah. I ordered a thingy for that. So we're about to have like 5 days of super hot weather, guys. And what that means is that we have the need to water our garden. And so this morning I was like, hey, before it gets super hot, let's water the garden because we're going to have to water the garden And what that means is that he went on and turned the hose on in the garden. And then what that means is, guess what? Yeah, you guessed it. The water is still on. We have been watering the garden for 45 minutes. So I'm pretty sure the garden does not need watering tomorrow. We had a timer up there that would let us like set up zones and all that. And over the winter, whatever, it's like years old. I've had this timer for probably 15 years. It finally gave up the ghost, so our timer doesn't work. So yesterday I actually ordered manual timers for the gardens so that we can just be like, go 15 minutes and it dials down so there's less to break. Because a lot of what we've been doing lately is deciding what can we do that doesn't require a computer thing that will break, because the computer things break around here all the time. And what I usually do when watering is I set a timer on my phone, but I did not this morning. So yes, very fun. Packrat says, good morning. I heard about your boot camp adventure. Hi, Tactical. What do you mean? What do you mean? Packrat, what do you mean by my boot camp adventure? Do you mean the boot camp workshop we're going to do before Self-Reliance Festival? That's going to be like a whole day of a whole bunch of different classes all in one thing? Good question. Okay, so back to forage. Now that we've turned the garden water off and not run my well out of water, which would be a bummer. The berries are still coming on. Blackberries aren't ripe yet, but they're going to be ripe any second now. And then blueberries should be ripe right now. My blueberries are not doing well this year because of me. I let weeds come up around them and didn't keep that controlled. So they didn't put fruit on, basically. But I have one plum. I have one single plum on one single tree in the food forest. And then my trees are starting to show like they're breaking branches. And they've got like black streaks on the areas where the branches break. And that is from our friends who came to visit us this year, the cicadas. So the cicadas, yeah, they've had some impact on the tree because we talked about this. Like very young trees can be very hurt by cicadas, but in general, trees don't get hurt. But they do have some damage from having the cicadas like eat through the bark and suck out nectar or whatever. That's not really nectar, it's pitch, or what's that called? Sap. Sap's the word I'm looking for. I think they eat the cadmium layer too. So the trees show some damage this year, but nothing that's consequential. And sometimes when you beat plants back, they come back stronger the next year. But that is going on. But I have a plum. And then the raspberries they're starting to wrap up. They're almost done for the year. And because it'll get really hot next. And then they're going to say, screw you, lady. And then we've also got daylilies for salads. And I didn't grow enough salad this year. So I have like hot weather resistant spinaches that I'm actually going to probably harvest some for, there is no tonight's dinner. For Sunday night's dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, you can harvest it for tonight's dinner if you want. Do you want a salad tonight?
No.
Okay, because we have cabbages.
Okay.
So yeah, that's going to happen. But daylilies are flower that you can eat the flower part and you can eat the tuber. They taste kind of like radishes, and you want to make sure you identify that plant correctly if you're foraging it, because a lot of people call things daylilies. So at some point, actually, I should probably do sort of like, during our July webinar, we'll be doing some of the wild edible plants. So that'll, like just how to approach that matter and how to make sure you don't accidentally eat daylilies that aren't daylilies, for example. Elderflowers are blooming, so you can also eat those. There has already been a cautionary post put out about not eating poison hemlock instead. Those two plants look completely different. However, if you're identifying elderberry for the first time ever, I recommend get a friend to verify who does know, because then you know. And also have them help you identify poison hemlock and show you that, and Queen Anne's lace, so you can see the difference between all those plants, because a lot of quote unquote poisonous plants they're going to give you gastronomical distress and other things, but like poison hemlock, like for realsies, you don't want to eat that one because it'll kill you.
Now I'm just curious, how do you confuse elderberry and poison hemlock?
Oh, your southern drawl is coming out in the word elderberry.
It's just I'm very familiar with both plants, and I do not see how you confuse the
That's because
two.
you're very familiar. If you're looking for elderberry for the first time, it's got this white lacy flower, right? hemlock also has the poison hemlock also has a white lacy flower.
So people just look at the
And
flower and not the rest
Queen
of the plant.
Anne's lace also has a white lacy flower. Yeah, what's happening? And so like the leaf shape is different, totally different on poison hemlock
Yeah,
than
they look nothing
like
alike.
the two things that usually get mistaken is next what'll happen is it's the poke and the elderberry. That's another one where people get confused. At least with the poke, the leaves are kind of the same shape, even though the flower is totally different and the way the berries present is totally different. But that's what I mean. Like it's important to make sure you know what you know, basically. So Skanes Girl says, I got 2 plums from my mom's old red plum. Super surprised as it had extensive trunk damage. Yeah. So we have 1 plum up there. It's not ripe yet. It's the only fruit in the entire food forest right now, which is not actually to be, it's not unexpected because the cherry trees aren't old enough to give cherries, and they're the ones most likely to produce fruit on the regular because they're the most acclimated to my climate from a species standpoint. And then typically what we have happen here is it warms up, they wake up, they put on blossoms, calling the bees in to cause pollination, which will give us fruit, and then it freezes.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people don't grow orchardy trees here, or they do things to, they buy varieties that will bloom later, or they heat up the outdoors around their orchard, which is not what I'm going to do. No. So I kind of see it as if I get fruit from these, great. And if not, I have other layers that will hopefully be productive, like the herbaceous layers. That's what we should be really focused on in the food forest this year.
Yeah.
Cultivate, because I have some good oregano plants out there, but you don't know where they are probably.
I've seen at least one.
Yeah. So I think we just keep spreading more oregano and strawberry out to the best of our ability on the ground cover and the herbaceous layer. Okay. Yeah. So that's everything I've been seeing there. I mean, like all the things I said last week are still true this week.
Yeah.
Where like the what's that stuff called for poison ivy? Jewelweed. Jewelweed is looking good, those sorts of things. Okay. Livestock is our next update. There's a lot of livestock updates. And the first one is that Stormy, little sheep, has a strange, like on the outer part of her ear, the strange stuff on her ear. Did you see that today when you saw her?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like her hair is a little thin and there's, I don't know, maybe something up with the skin, but.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that that's fly strike.
Okay.
Which can kill her. So I need to get a good picture of that to have a second opinion on that, because it's probably not, but it does look like it's one of those things I don't want to let go. And this is like true of sheep. Every time you see something wrong, you should be doing something. Speaking of which, probiotics today.
Yeah.
So I think you and I are going to the sheep. Yeah, we have some poopy sheep butts too. So that's all happening. They're also eating poison hemlock and not dying.
They're eating it in very small quantities.
Yeah, but I was like, not only did they eat the poison hemlock, but it was an adult, like flowering poison hemlock that was stripped of its leaves.
Yeah. And I mean, they've had exposure to it in a lot heavier concentrations before. And same thing with the milkweed. Like, I can't go through and get every single hemlock or milkweed plant out of the pasture. It's just not possible. And what I've seen in the past is they will hit some of it and then move on to something else. And I've never had any issues with them.
Yeah.
Like eating too much of it. So I'm not going to say it's not concerning, but it's not like, oh my God, panic, everybody's going to die mode.
Because horses are kind of that way with tansy ragweed.
I'm sure any animal is.
And then cows will totally kill themselves.
Well, cows are stupid.
So, yeah, I don't know either. I know that we have them on a pasture with plenty of other forage. So it's not like the only thing to eat is that. Because I think that's where a lot of people run into problems with the poisonous plants and the sheep is it's like the only thing to eat is poisonous.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
So yeah, and we have been systematically killing plants as we see them that we don't want there. But I figure that'll probably take another 5 years if we're even on that pasture for 5 more years to get it down to that point.
I don't think it's going to take that long.
You know, he likes to go back and mow everything.
Well, I mean, that's I can go over to the pasture right now and show basically 4 very distinct areas where one has grass and there's a weed here and there. Another has grass and some weeds that are a foot tall, but that look like death. And then you get up a little bit higher and it's just a mix of grass and weeds. And then there's still the briar vine thickets. And that's all a combination of putting the sheep on there in addition to mowing. The sections that I've mowed behind the sheep the most look the best.
Yeah.
And so, it's because like before with the mower we had before, I could only get so much because the mower was not capable of going up that hill. And so the bottom looks really good because that's the part I was able to mow. And then the sections that are the next level up look better because those were the first sections that I started mowing when I got the new mower. And as you go up the hill, it gets worse because I'm working my way up.
Yeah, makes sense. We have a dog that's very good at showing us the inadequacies of fencing.
He was out again this morning.
Yeah, so somewhere there's a big gap. Otherwise, he wouldn't be getting out of the electric fence. So do you think you know where it is or no idea?
Nope.
Okay. It's probably a divot in the ground that's hard to see. That's what I usually find at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. My other theory is he might be going over the temporary wire on the downhill side because the elevation change is so steep. He could probably sit on the uphill side and basically be staring, maybe knee high at the upper wire.
Okay. This is a good application for a game cam.
Yeah.
Yep. You gonna put one up?
I've got to go see if the one I have is still functional.
Oh, that's important. The rabbit tractor no-kill list story. So we lost a rabbit, and as a result, we need to quarantine rabbits and move rabbits because I think part of the issue is that we've been putting off putting the new hutch in, and that other thing is falling apart, and they get wet, and blah blah blah. So this week we had a big discussion because I'm like, we really need to do something with the rabbits, and then the process of getting the whole hutch in is a whole nother long story, like the new hutch. So Tactical decided to make a rabbit tractor this week. Tell them about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a new hutch that's basically ready to go. I need to put a foundation in for it, but then there's also like the trees we're about to drop would land on where I'm putting the foundation in for that. So it's another reason I've been procrastinating on that, but I basically went to Tractor Supply and they had a couple of 24-inch by 24-inch cages, and the only ones that they had were a kit that comes with legs and some little cute brackets and a plastic tray that slides onto the brackets. And I was like, I don't need that part. But then I actually pulled it out of the box when I got back and was like, if I flip those legs upside down, then I could use that to hang them from the tractor. And it just happens that you can actually flip them upside down and the holes still line up. So I was like, cool, that's going to make this easier. So I built a 2x4 frame, coated that in pine tar, and got everything put together. I literally just finished screwing the roof on a couple of minutes before I walked in here. So the only other thing that needs to happen right now is getting water set up, and then we could actually start putting rabbits in there.
Yeah. So then that will quarantine too. I have one with a damage, like they've been fighting. with each other.
Yeah.
So I have to check out its wound and make sure that it will recover, I hope.
Yeah.
We need to double check them for fly strike and ear mites too,
Yeah.
just to make sure that's all cool. So then that will go out on pasture, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening with the rabbit coop rabbit coop. It's not the right word. Hutch in the in the infrastructure section. We've got Khaki Campbells make some amazing nests, don't they?
It's actually getting irritating
Why?
because their purpose in life is to give me eggs, and they're not doing that right now.
They're hiding them all over the yard in nests.
They're hiding them everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain there's one in that brush pile down by the pond.
Okay.
Like in like the middle of that massive pile of sticks.
You mean a duck or a nest or both?
Both.
Okay. Yeah, so Khaki Campbells at this time start hiding their eggs from you and setting on them and trying to hatch birds. And then they hatch the birds and then they raise them for like 2 weeks and then leave them on their own. And then they die because they need mom longer than that. So what's going to happen, because we have one that we're letting actually stay on her nest.
When we say letting her stay on the nest, I haven't felt like trying to go cross the pond to kick her off.
I think you should just let her stay on the nest and see what happens.
At this point, I'm going to, but
we may have to catch baby ducks and raise them ourselves, though.
Yeah, if I have a feeling that if she actually hatches babies out, they're going in the brooder.
And then we had a baby duck fail. So one of the Muscovies made an amazing duck cave nest, hatched one single duck, one duck, which is weird.
Yeah.
And then raised the duck for 5 days and then flattened it. Like, I found it squished where she was hanging out with it. And I'm not sure why that happened, because typically Muscovies are pretty good at raising their ducks.
Yeah.
My theory is it was a male and they decided they didn't want a male.
You think she killed it?
Possible. No, I wasn't there. But yeah. So that was a bummer because it was really cute. And they were hanging out together doing duck things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. If she hatches another nest next year, we might want to catch the babies and even, maybe put her in a place. Because the other option is there was a big duck dust up fight or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, she is missing a couple of feathers on the back of her head, so the drake's obviously been after her.
Yeah, so we may want to put her away from the drake because that drake's a jerk.
Drake is a straight up dick.
Yeah. That's actually when my duck typo actually means something. It's talking about him. Autocorrect likes to change the word duck to dick for me, which has gotten me into all sorts of trouble. And the goats keep getting out because the fence was struck by lightning.
I don't know if that's why they're getting out, but
I think that's why, because if they're not getting shocked, they're going to get out unless they have opened another hole somewhere.
They might have opened another hole somewhere.
Okay. Who knows?
We'll find out if they get out again today.
Clover's always happy to tell us she got out, though.
Yeah.
She's overjoyed, in fact. Does anybody want any goats? Let me know. Okay. Next segment is Grows, where we talk about what's growing on the homestead. The tomato wall has been some of the tomatoes were climbing, but most of them were flopping over because I didn't trellis them up. And this year they've grown much faster than in past years. So I have one that's already all the way up to my roof, and it is June 14th. So that one, I'm deciding if I'm just going to top it or train it to go long ways, sideways, just for the fun of it. Don't know. I'll be talking to Tactical about that today, though, because if I decide to train it, the training has to start before I leave town again. Not this leave town, but the next leave town. And in between those two leave towns, I have 8 hours of time.
That's what it says. It's 2 days from now.
Yeah. So that's happening. And yesterday I was like, okay, I really, before I go out of town for a whole week, need to make sure these are where they need to be. They've They have flowers set. They're starting to set fruit. That's good. We are now going to go into a week of over 95 degrees where they won't do anything except for grow. So, which is a bummer.
Okay.
Because I like my tomatoes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, after trimming them all, I'm like, where else can we start tomatoes on the property? Because I have all of these like long plants that I can root and plant around. But we decided not to go too nuts with that. Right?
Sure.
He's like, whatever, Nicole, do whatever you want to do with your dang tomatoes. So it's all together now, and he's almost done with the other section of tomato wall. So then I have still left tomatoes to transplant into that, and then it's done for the year.
Yeah.
So that's going well. The lower aquaponics system is back up and running. Tell them what that is.
So I have an aquaponics system outside of the cabin, and it was starting to get overtaken with weeds. Like there's still fish in it and everything, but like it needed a massive reset. One particular dog decided one of the beds would make a nice bed, and so she of course got in there, scratched everything up to make a nice cool spot for her belly.
Was it your dog or my dog?
It was Cece.
I was like, I feel like this is Cece and not Sunny.
Yeah, Sunny's done it too, but the last time it was Cece. And so I finally got in there and pulled all of the mulch out of the beds, used that to cap a compost pile, and put some more soil in there, which those beds needed a little more soil anyway, and put a fresh layer of mulch on everything. I've got a couple of worm bins that I threw a bunch of grow plugs in so that the worms could eat all of the stuff off of the grow plugs. So I pulled a couple of those out of the worm bins and just buried them in the aquaponics beds. And then, yeah, I've got a couple of things that I've put back in there so far. So we'll see. If nothing else, it's just putting that on life support. But I'm also kicking around the idea of possibly expanding that system a little bit. But that's a conversation for a later date.
It is. Rachel wants to know if we have any pictures of the rabbit tractor. I can make a short about that later today, Rachel, and upload it.
Yeah, literally.
Because we're going to be moving rabbits into it, so it's not a terrible time for that. And it's going to look different than most rabbit tractors you've seen, but it's by design that way. So garlic harvest time is near. I got the scapes last week from the garlic, and some of them have fallen over, I think, because we got so much rain. So I'll be testing bulbs, but I'm expecting this week or next week it's time to harvest garlic. It's actually good that we've had 3 or 4 days of no rain for stuff to dry out a little bit in the garden. But now we have to water the garden because after all that rain, the plants are kind of used to like it just rains all the time. That's what they're acclimated to. And now we're going into Tennessee drought. So no rain in the forecast, hot AF. This is like where we get a lot of stress for plants. In fact, the garden needs to have the shade cloth hung. I need a bunch of zip ties to do that. It'll take me about 45 minutes with a little bit of help.
Thankfully, I just ordered a ton of zip ties.
Okay, good. And then I have all the shade cloth I need to do the whole garden, which is what's going to happen this year.
Okay.
So that's super fun, isn't it? Your favorite.
It's not so much that I care about actually doing it. It's just on a long list.
I know. We're like in no-kill list mode, guys, which means that we evaluate things on what's going to die and what's its hierarchy on the things of we don't want it to die. So livestock has a tendency to take precedence over plants.
Yeah.
Unless it's a very, very special plant, but we don't have one of those. So, yeah. I have a sister named Cece. Yep, Cece is my dog. Her name is Lucy, really, but that is... when I was harvesting garlic scapes, I've always gone through and just snapped them at where they go into the stem. And I accidentally tripped and pulled, and it's like you pull the whole scape out of the the stem like it's a lipstick if you pull instead of break. So I started pulling and you get more garlic scapes. Just FYI. That was this year's, like, I thought I knew everything about my garlic. Didn't know that. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but like 90% of the time, more garlic scape comes out when you pull the garlic scapes. And you grasp them like close to where they go into the stem and pull slowly, not.
You're gonna have to show me that.
Yeah, it was a really weird thing that happened while I was up there. So that was my new discovery for the year. And there's always a new discovery in the garden. Okay, next segment is holler neighbors and community. We had our chicken class last week, and all the holler neighbors helped. It was super awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that class was lower head count than I usually have. And so we got more individual time with students, which I thought was better. So we are now going to keep that class small moving forward.
Yeah, agreed.
Assuming we do it next year. Are we doing it next year?
I don't see why not.
Yeah. So Packrat says, I harvested one garlic that fell over early, size of a shooting marble. I don't know enough about growing garlic. Okay, well, you can still eat it. It's garlic. It's delicious. So chicken class went well, and the birds I got from Hofgrid Homestead were in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've still got some in the freezer. So, because I tried to make it so we ended the chicken class without chicken in my freezer, but here we are.
That's always the case, though.
Luckily, it's not like a boat ton. Like in past years, we would do the class because we were raising a whole bunch of chickens. We'd do the class and then everybody'd leave and it'd be like 2:00 and we'd be exhausted. And then we'd start processing the rest of the chickens for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, that was the suck part.
Yeah, and because I don't feel like when you're taking a class for me, it's your job to help me process the chickens. So I wasn't like, everybody do 3 birds and you keep 1 and you pay me money for the class and then I get free processing out of the deal. Which I know other people do that. But yeah, I don't feel right about doing that. So everybody at this class processed their 1 that they got to take home. And I was like, if you want to process more, that's why I have more if you want more practice, but you don't have to. Like, we can burn through the rest of these birds in minutes if you don't. And I think everybody except for 1 person,
yeah, I think so,
did 2 birds because they wanted to practice the dispatch one more time. And then on the evisceration side, not everybody did 2, but some did 2.
Yeah.
And then we had a surprise at the end of the day. So like in the ice bath, which we did in a cooler this year, we made sure all the birds were processed before we cleaned everything and sterilized everything, like the post clean. And everybody had left and the Eversols were here and we're like, okay, we'll dump the ice and like bleach out the coolers and all of that. So that's all done today. We're just kind of figuring out what we were really going to get done from a cleanup standpoint. And there was a surprise chicken in the bottom of that ice bath. And they're like, everybody had like, everything had been sterilized and like faces fell. They were like, oh, there's 1 more. Is that about a good description of what happened?
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to mess with it. And I was like, I'll do that one. And it wasn't even a very big one, but it was really well chilled. Like that was like super easy to work with. So I grabbed it and I like eviscerated and put it away. And it was probably less than a 2 minutes process to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, I'm so much faster at this when I'm not actually teaching it.
Yeah.
It was just done. And I was like, that's right. That's why we can burn through a bunch of chickens in a day when we're processing. But, when you're teaching it, it takes like half an hour to show people all the parts of evisceration. And then when they're doing it, you're like, no, you have to feel for the esophagus. No, you have to get it's up. Let me put my hand in it. Yep, it's there. Okay, now you're looking for a rubber band in this chicken that you can grab. And, it takes more time. And then once you've done it once, you get the feel for it.
Yeah.
And then you at least know what you're looking for and like how to scoop your finger to get the thing. And it's just it's about getting a feel for things. The Eversols have found and purchased land. They actually closed on their land, so they will be moving sometime probably in the next 6 months or so, which is both happy for them but sad for us because they've been such a good fit to the holler neighbor community. Not that they stop being holler neighbors when they move, but they're going to go out and build their dream property, which is kind of cool for them.
Yeah.
So they're all happy about that. And I can't wait to see the property.
Yeah.
Base camp will be for rent. If anybody's interested, let me know. Because otherwise, I think we're gonna either Airbnb it or just look for a local renter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll probably try Airbnb first.
Okay.
Because I'm a little leery of. Oh, you know what we can do? Okay, so if a community member doesn't want to come in, we could totally do the traveling nurse thing.
That's true.
Yeah, we could do that. That'd be nice. It also means you're gonna have to mow that lawn.
That'll take 10 minutes.
Anyway, there's a really nice chicken coop there that Steve built that will be staying there because he's not moving that coop.
Why not?
Because it's heavy.
That's what forklifts are for, right?
Yeah. Also, we've got Tactical's kind of joking how everybody's having chicken processing this month. So our friends in Sparta are processing chickens this weekend, and it's just 2 people processing 35 birds. Which, if you and I did that, we would do a set of 12 on Saturday, finish the 12, look at each other and say, do we have enough energy for 12 more?
Yeah.
And we would probably get 2 sets of 12 done. Because that's how the 2 of us, that's like the sets. And
that's a slog to do it with just 2 people.
Yeah, and 35 birds is a slog. Especially, it depends on how you're set up. Like, as we get better set up for this, it's less of a slog, I think.
Yeah, but even with that, like, it's nice to have at least 4 people because you can stick with one task.
Yeah.
So, like, somebody's dispatching, somebody's
Plucking.
scalding and plucking, as opposed to, let me dispatch, walk all the way over here, scald it, pluck it, go put it in the thing. Like, it's just so much more streamlined just having the extra 2 people.
Yeah, but with 2 people, somebody dispatches and the other person scalds and plucks and puts in the ice bath.
Yeah.
And then when last dispatch has happened, person who was scalding and plucking moves to the evisceration station while you deep clean all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's basically how that works for us. So we'll do 2 sets of 12, and then I'm like, okay, half the day is gone, and I'm moving on to other things.
Yeah.
So 35 birds, that would mean that probably again on Sunday I do it. Although I might just do that 3rd batch of, 11 birds or so. I guess it's 11 birds. I would probably push through to do it just to be done so that the sterilization could happen. But
we've gone both ways.
Yeah, we have gone both ways. And it's not that bad, but with 2 extra sets of hands, it's more than doubling your speed.
Yeah.
It's just more efficient. So the cool thing that happened, and then they don't have a scalder, but I have a scalder. And I know them well enough to know they won't ruin my scalder if they use my scalder. So the Eversols are headed over to their house with the scalder to get everything done. Because the other thing that will slow you way down in chicken processing is using a burner and a pot of water as your scalding station, because you have to keep it at the right temperature and it falls. I have the Featherman scalder.
Yeah.
And that thing just keeps the right temperature the whole time without any fussing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of magic. That was probably that, and having a plucker are the 2 things that really make a huge difference in speed. Although I can pluck a well-scalded bird pretty quickly without a plucker.
Yeah. And I was actually just sitting here thinking, it's like, if I could only have one, I would probably take the scalder.
I would take the scalder every time. Yeah, because if it's scalded well, the feathers come right off when you're plucking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you've had to pluck like 40 birds in one afternoon because your plucker broke, then you get really good at it.
Yeah, and especially if it's not a well-scalded bird, you're going to end up hand plucking a lot of feathers anyway.
Yeah. So it's all about getting the scald right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like a key. But if you over-scald it, then the skin comes off.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole thing. Okay. Next up is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. And so we talked about, he's made a really nice rabbit hutch. It needs a foundation. Now, when I say he's over engineering the foundation, I'm not kidding, but it's his decision to make, and he has a good reason for it. He's tired of rebuilding rabbit hutches that get rotty on the bottom from poop.
I'm also tired of them sinking into the mud.
And then they sink into the mud. So what he decided he's doing is a cinder block foundation with some concrete.
Yep.
So if that doesn't work right, the result is he has to chip all that crap out and get rid of it. But I think it will work. But that has been slowing down the project immensely. Because every time I talk to him, he's like, but I need to make the foundation. What's it going to take to make the foundation? I don't know.
Well, I know what it'll take. I just have to actually get out there, lay some stuff out, take some measurements. And it has not exactly been at the top of the no-kill list.
Yeah. Except for now it is.
Well, now.
Yeah. So we kind of reached this point, and then he was like, but I don't have room to lay it out. And I'm at this point where I'm like, I'm tired of crap getting under Taj Mahal and in my way. And then when we have an event, I have to move all this crap. When if we just don't have crap under there, then people can come and it's super easy. So we had a big picture discussion about how that was going to work. And I was like, well, you can lay it out under the carport. We just lay it out, take your measurements, and we need to put it away and get it out of there. Because where he wanted to lay it out is the workshop space, which is just not ready for that. So we had that discussion. And then he's like, but where I want to put it, that tree that split in half last year, and the electric company only cut half the tree. So the other half is like dangling the other direction, is right where the rabbit hutch goes.
Yeah, the thing's eventually going to end up somewhere in that vicinity.
So I was like, last time I got a bid to take trees down on my property, I'm kidding you not, it was $5,000. I didn't even tell you that yesterday when you brought that up.
That number would not have surprised me.
And I was like, $5,000 is an awful lot of like concrete that I could fix my driveway with, for example.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have a preconceived notion about this. I will get a couple bids from arborists and see what it will take to take the stupid tree down. And then we had to talk while we were there, other trees that are going to need trimming.
Yeah.
So the arborist came out yesterday. The bid was not $5,000.
No.
And I added a big tree to it.
Yeah, and that added a decent amount to the price, but it's still, and the other side of that too is the fact that we told him, like, all I want is that tree on the ground. I don't need you to do anything else to it. I don't need you to haul it off. I don't want you to haul it off. I want the tree. So that did take a nice chunk off of the price, I think.
Yeah, so for under $1,000, we can get all of the tree work done, plus take out a chestnut tree that I don't want to have to take out because it's such a big tree, but it's literally right up on the cabin.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it already does cause some problems there, which is a bummer because that means we're losing shade over there.
That thought process is already going through my head.
Yeah. But so we are getting the trees done before he can do the rabbit hutch, which is why he made the rabbit tractor to get the rabbits handled because they're on the no-kill list. And then I think finally the hutch can get put together with its foundation. We should totally run a time lapse on you putting that foundation together for people.
Maybe.
Why do you look so confused about maybe?
It's not just going to be like a 2-hour thing.
That does not surprise me at all. It's going to take you 7 days to make that foundation.
Exactly. It's going to be a really weird live stream with me not standing there.
I didn't say live. I said a time lapse recording.
No.
Yeah, different. Like Red Flyer Media did on the Food Forest install. She had like an all day sort of, this is what it started and this is what it ended.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that could make a really good one. So those trees are coming out. And then we identified a type. So a type 1 error is when you put something in like your house in the wrong place on your property, and it's going to be more expensive to fix the problem than to have to deal with the ongoing aggravation that your house being in the wrong place causes.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get to the point where that might not be true of my house.
Okay.
But anyway, So we have this like other situation. So here's what happened. I have these compost bins that we've used for as like a continuous compost for years that are just like the square ones you buy at the store that have contact with the ground and the lid. And in the last couple of years, we've walked away from using those as much, and they've just sat there forgotten for 2 years, right? So yeah. So he got a bug in his ass and decided it was time to deal with those and pulled them apart, sifted out the compost, and made a really nice pile of compost. Well, it had nice compost in there because it's just been sitting there with worms or whatever for 2 years. Open to the air, as a matter of fact. So it was getting rained on, like all of the things. And so he was like, we need to use this compost for something. And I was like, well, put it in the wheelbarrow and I'll go spread it out in some places where I need compost. And then I saw the wheelbarrow of nice compost. And what had happened in between me having the compost discussion and that pile of compost happening is he said in passing, I don't understand why we treat the garden like it has to be where it is because that's where it's always been, as opposed to thinking about where the garden should be, which is true. 17 years ago, when I moved here, there was a garden space where the garden is that the other people put in before me. Well, actually, probably 2 people ago put in, which was the front yard area of the original homesteader cabin that was built here in the late 1800s. That's why the garden's there, because there was a house right in front of it.
Yeah.
And a chicken coop. A 1-room cabin house, guys. So he had said that, and I'm not sure he realized that I heard it even. Because he's like, what if we just put raised beds over there, and pointed and then went on with his life? So then I'm looking at this really nice compost that would make a really good top layer of a raised bed. And I'm like, this is a valid question. So now I'm about to go put this in my garden, which is where the garden is, because the garden's been there since I moved in. And that's the only reason it's been there. That in the pattern of my day, I have to make a conscious effort to go to the garden because it's not where I see or walk or have my coffee. And
let me rephrase that in a more accurate term. The only reason she ever goes to that part of the property is because the garden's there.
Yeah, it's true. And then I was looking at this nice material that could make a raised bed. And I'm like, well, why don't we just start putting raised beds in? I'm like, I need to have this conversation with you that's annoying, especially because you're freaked out about how overwhelmed you are with projects. So I'm going to talk about another project, but I know we're not really going to do it, but we need to have this talk. And so what we did is he stopped working, I stopped working, and we spent probably an hour looking at different places where the garden should be versus where the garden is.
Yeah.
And then I came to the conclusion, if I did ever move my house 90 degrees, it would make more sense to have the garden there. But since it's this way, it makes more sense to have it there because I will walk out and go to the garden.
Yeah.
So, and then I came up with the why not both?
Yeah.
But we can't build both at one time. So he was like, okay, so what do you want to build them out of? And I said, well, it's kind of funny you should ask that because like if we just build them out of wood and it's done, that's fine. But we just have to acknowledge that the wood will break down over time. We'll be redoing the raised beds. And he's like, I don't want to build them out of wood. That's what he sounded like when he said it.
Yeah.
I don't want to build them out of wood.
There's a reason that I said it like that, because option A is I built something that I've already done before that already needs to be replaced.
How behind are you on the survival podcast? Do you even listen to those anymore?
Not a lot.
I was shocked to discover this next thing. I said, well, if we're not going to build them out of wood, like cinder block comes to mind, some other things. I was like, at the same time, Vivor makes this raised bed that's, that you can just buy and they're not that expensive. And they're the white width. They're the right width for me because I don't want a 4-foot wide bed. I want 3 or smaller, but not too small, because I actually I can reach across, but I will do more if I can reach all the way across, basically, which I can lean and get 3 feet. So, and he looked at me like I was speaking some other language, like he's never heard of Vivor before. He's like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm like, Vivor, you know, the store, Vevor, Vivor.
No, I did not know the store.
And I was like, okay, so like I am now an affiliate of Vivor, so I have like affiliate links you can use, and I'm gonna be starting to roll out some product reviews when I get back from California, and like all of it, like I have talked about this, but it has not. None of that had penetrated in the last month that this has been going on. Like,
Okay.
weren't you even here when I was like, I think I'm gonna test this product and that product?
I heard you mention some
Yeah,
stuff about it, but it's not like
yeah.
I got fully briefed on what you were
I'll
doing.
probably announce the Vivor thing in the Monday mail, guys, with some links for some things I already know are really cool from them. I wanted to roll it out with my first product review, which is going to be they have a sous vide cooker and a burr grinder, coffee grinder. And everybody's always asking me for consumer grade coffee grinder recommendations. And I have like old knowledge, but no new knowledge. And so I'm going to test their burr grinder and see if it's worth a darn, basically.
Okay.
And then I'll do the reviews, and then we'll put this on the website. The website's got to have some changes made to it. So that was basically, so then I mentioned these beds, and then he goes and he's like, you mean these? And he shows me a picture. I'm like, yeah, they come in a variety of shapes and sizes. And I'm like, and if you want to see how like what their construction's like, I happen to know that Steve Eversole has one. I don't think it's put together. I think it's still in the box, but you can like actually look at the materials to decide if you like it. Yeah, Skangs Girl said just bought several Vivor beds for her high tunnel and she loves them. Yeah, they're great. I've seen them. And I know Jack's been raving about them for months, which is why I was surprised you hadn't heard of them. Jack Spirko from the Survival Podcast.
I had heard him mention them. I have not been like, let me go down this rabbit
So
hole.
let me tell you why I'm not reviewing the Vivor beds, because Jack has, and we have enough audience crossover that I was like, I'm going to review things he hasn't reviewed.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, different stuff. And like with the coffee angle, it makes more sense. I may review the beds event. I mean, now we're going to end up buying 10 of them. So, right? 10 or 12.
4, 5, 6, 9.
9. Yeah. They're like on sale for $60 right now. Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes because now I've talked about it so much. I should just put a link in the show notes. Sorry, guys. But that he looked at those and he was like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, okay, so this conversation's over. As a result of this conversation, knowing the big picture is that by next year the garden's going to move to down there. What we really need to put our time in on is making as much compost as possible that's ready for next year. So anytime people have material they don't want, like coop litter or whatever, we're making another freaking Johnson Sioux bioreactor compost somewhere.
Yeah.
So as much compost as possible, because I want to use soil from here that we've made.
Yeah.
As opposed to commercial soil, A, because that makes it expensive if you have to buy the soil. And B, I want to set them up so that like we put wood in the bottom and then the soil on top, and then that'll bump down. So we'll have to keep but like our best next step is make as much compost as possible. And then we also, like, if we're putting it in there, I already want the water automated when it goes in. So having easy access to water, so I don't have to run all the way up to the house, turn it on, run all the way down there, blah, 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 back and forth. And I'm like, so if we need to rent a ditch witch and trench and put in a spigot or whatever, that gets done, because then I'll actually take care of it in the water side of things. And he's like, well, we have to talk about that. I'm like, we have time to talk about it. I'm just saying these are the things to think about. And then when I put the garden to bed up at the top of the hill, I'm not doing it with the intention of doing most of my planting there next year. I'm doing it with the intention of maybe doing some backup crops sort of thing. So like my garlic will probably still be up there, and maybe green beans or squash or something up there.
Yeah.
And then if the raised beds fail, then I have like two things happening, because like the fertility up there is pretty good at this point, except for we've been having to boost it with all the rain. But yeah, but it was funny because literally that garden has been there for 17 years because the garden was there when I moved. It was kind of like the burn pile area.
Yeah.
There was a bonfire area for the first 12 or 13, 14 years of this homestead because the day I moved in, somebody already had a bonfire ready to go there.
Yeah.
So now that's gone.
Thankfully.
And I had always thought like it would be like I've always sort of been poking at building a garden near the house, like, you know, where the aquaponics system may get installed one day.
Yeah.
So then I go on with my life. He goes on with his life. And then at dinner time, he comes in and he's like, "You have any pens?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I look and there's like a grid pattern of pens on my counter and cigarette lighters.
This is whatever I could make work to
And I was like,
visually
I looked
be
at
like,
it
right here.
and I was like, that's the raised bed plan, right? He's like, "Yeah, we could put a pond right there." So, yeah, that's what it's like to live with a redneck. Like, they don't draw pictures on paper. They just use cigarette lighters and pens and cups to show you what they're thinking of doing.
It's because when I walked in, there was like 5 pens sitting there and no paper.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. So I call that like the type 2 or type 1.5 error that was made on this property. I'm not even sure it was really an error. It was made because the house used to be in a different location. And then when the house was put in, it actually at that time would have made sense to adjust where the garden was. But there was a whole row of quinces in my way, which were really hard to get moved. But they're gone now.
No.
So, yeah, everything is going to totally change here in the next year as far as and that's good because the better flow I have here, the more the homestead works for me instead of me having to remember to go up because it's literally it's not like I don't know I have a garden. But when you walk out and you see it and you see some droopy plants in the morning, you're like, "Oh, water." Like it's easier to have that feedback rather than, "Oh, it's 3:15 in the afternoon. I haven't been up there yet. I better go up and look." Right? So, yeah, and Packrat says recoverable. Absolutely recoverable. This isn't really a type 1 error at all. It's you do want to think about where your garden is before you commit to where your garden is long term. And when I first started building this homestead, I had no idea what permaculture was, and I was like, the garden's here, so the garden's here. And then we spent like years trying to figure out how do we redesign the flow so I like to walk up there every day. Like that's happened. We were supposed to put the barn up there, so I'd have to go to the barn. And then I walk by the garden on the way to my barn.
Possible a barn might still go up there one day.
Yeah. Or at least a woodshed. Why don't we just put a woodshed up there?
Might.
Yeah. As long as we can still drive up there to get the wood down here.
Yeah.
Anyway. So other than that, we're paying a tree guy. That's our financial update. You have anything else about the homestead?
I don't think so.
I said it might get spicy today because every question I asked him this morning, he was grumpy about. Let's talk about grumpy rednecks. Why are you grumpy this week?
Because I've got more things on the no-kill list than I can handle right now. So every time she sends to open her mouth, it seems to remind me of another thing that I haven't gotten to yet.
And then do you take that personally?
It's not not necessarily that I take it personally. It's just a reminder of, yes, when I go to do that, it's going to suck because it's going to take 15 trips back and forth and about an hour to screw a 2x4 in. So it's just the forelooming dread of having to do something.
So Tactical's feeling a little overwhelmed right now. And every time I open my mouth, I'm like, "Oh, where are we on that chicken or the rabbit tractor?" And then he gets mad. He doesn't really get mad. He gets frustrated sounding. I'm like, I don't mean it as a critique. I just want to know where it's at. So he was late to the show because he was attaching the roof to the rabbit tractor, I believe. Yeah. I heard him out there doing it, and I was like, I got to get this email out and the show produced from yesterday and blah blah blah, like all the things.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot about that here. Guys, next week I will be coming to you from California because my stepdad is very, very sick. I haven't talked about it much on the show because I don't have facts to share, but it is not a good, how do you say this the right way? like the end result is going to be that he passes away. We just don't know when. And right now I thought it would be a good time for me to go out there for a week while I can. And he's like in good enough shape to hang out.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving Monday. I'll be back the following Monday. That means that the Monday live streams will not be live. They will be pre-recorded and just played live at 2 p.m. on Mondays. And then next week's Tuesday live is with Billy Bond from Permapasture Farms. We haven't heard from him in a long time, so I think that's going to be a fun catch-up one.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday shows are now, like I did my last Wednesday interview this week. So Friday Homestead happenings next week is a redneck takeover.
Okay.
Are you prepared for that?
Sure.
Okay. So I will set up the show for you so you can just go into StreamYard and stream from the link that I set up rather than make your own link.
Make sure you put operating instructions in with that.
Homestead Glamour says prognosis is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So doctors have put a timeline on it, and I haven't, as I said, it's like his story to tell, not mine. So it's just doctors don't put timelines on things anymore because what if they're wrong, right? And that part of life seems to be very much up to the person impacted. He's not ready to go yet, so I think he'll be around for a while.
Yeah.
Unless he isn't. So then I was like, well, I guess I'll go to California for a visit, and that'll be good because visits are good.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so I'll be out next week, and he'll be taking over the show next Friday for the Homestead update. And then the following week, we'll be back to business as usual. I do want to remind you, if you are a member, Joel Salatin is giving us a member webinar it's Wednesday, the 26th of June at 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern. We'll be streaming that, and it's his Homestead time management system. I'm sending you an email probably within the next hour if you are a member, just reminding you, explaining a little bit more about that webinar, what that webinar is about, and explaining how to get signed up for it. I'm pretty excited that he made time for this webinar, and it all came from just one sentence he said at Self-Reliance Festival last fall, where he talked about his 20-minute project list and managing time on the homestead. And I'm like, oh, we need to have that talk, because what do I hear from all y'all? And what do you hear from me? Overwhelmed. The no-kill list is too long. How do we keep things moving forward? Spring is really hard. Like spring, you just end up in this like, everything has to be done at once. And Joel's had a whole life to figure out how to do this on farm scale with helpers and optimize time so that he can make profit on his farm, so that he stays in business and can provide regenerative food to lots of people, not just his family. So I think this is going to be a great webinar. I'll be highlighting it a lot next week, but definitely check your inboxes, and we'll have the sign up for people who want to buy just that standalone webinar. I will have that on the homepage before I head to the Homestead Bootcamp today. I have like 5 computer things to do, and then I need to go around outside and make sure I've done my no-kill projects for the week before I leave, because when I come back, I'm home for like an afternoon, and then I fly out to California again. So we're doing a quick turnaround. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.